All right. All right. So why are we here? So startups can validate their business ideas, and I'll explain what I mean by validate in a minute, on a shoestring budget, right? And I really believe startups can do that. You don't have to go get investment right away. Like you can validate your idea yourself with and make it much more attractive to investors. Because what you're doing when you validate your own business idea is you're reducing risk for those investors, right? Because when an investor puts money into a company, right, they're inherently taking risk in that company. And if you can show people that you've interviewed a whole bunch of customers and you've run experiments to prove that there's demand for your new product or service, and you can show that they're willing to pay a certain amount that is a sustainable business, or hopefully a hockey stick growth type business, you're reducing risk for those investors, and therefore they don't need to be compensated for that risk. And so you can even get and you can even get investors to compete with each other, which then allows you to demand better terms and keep more of the equity for yourself. Also, there's a saying in the entrepreneurial world: don't take the big check too early. And how I interpret this is, if you have not validated your business idea yet and you do take a big check from an investor, that's a recipe, it's a dangerous recipe, because that investor will very soon start asking, what are you doing with my money? Or what are you doing with the money that I gave you, right? And it will create this pressure to build something, even if the idea is not ready yet. So I second that quote, don't take the big check too early. All right, so I'm going to get into the framework a little bit here, and then show you some examples, and then I'm going to come back to this why at the end and hit home on that again. So this is what I affectionately call the squiggle chart. It's actually from a website called thedesignsquiggle.com. But on the left-hand side, this is what we call the search phase, right? So this is the search for what business idea should we be scaling. Okay, so it's represented by these squiggles because there's a high level of risk and a high level of uncertainty about what this business idea is and what it should be. And then on the right-hand side, once we figure that out, once the problem, solution, and business model are known, we will execute, right? So this is how do we scale it? And this is where you do need investment to scale a business idea, take it globally, worldwide, and grow it the size that you're and the pace that you're looking at doing that. So I'm going to focus on the left-hand side here, which is the search today, because that's really where lean innovation fits. So you can break down those squiggles into three diamonds, right? So problem, solution, and business model. And those three, the order of that is very important. So what critical customer problem or need are you solving with your business? That's the first diamond there. What critical customer problem or need are you solving for your business? Next, can you validate with evidence from customers that your solution solves that problem and that customers want it, right? That they desire it, that desirability is there. And then lastly, in the business model, is there a willingness to pay from customers? And really, like, what's it going to take to commercialize this business and get it off the ground? And is it a sustainable business, or is the point at which people are willing to pay not going to cover your costs and other activities that need to happen? So it's in that order. You can't start talking about solutions until you've validated the problem. You can't start talking about business models until you've validated that you have a solution. And it's not until all three are done that you have what we call an investment-ready business. I'm going to talk a little bit about the shapes of the diamonds too. So the diamonds come from design thinking methodology, or human-centered design. And they're meant to represent a diverge-converge methodology. And so this is, if you're starting at the very beginning, looking for problems to solve for customers, you'll be doing what we call customer discovery. And I'll talk a little bit about customer discovery here in a few slides. But this is when you're really asking open-ended questions and generating a list of problems to solve for your customers. And so that list is getting bigger. But then in the second half of the diamond, you're evaluating which of those problems is the biggest for the customer and which of them should you go after first. And so it's a diverge converge methodology, and it applies also to the solution and business model. Once you decide on a problem you're going to solve, what are all the different ways we could solve it? And then we test with customers, measuring what they do and not just listening to what they say. Does this solution solve that problem for customers? And again, in the business model, are people willing to pay for it? Okay. And then overlaid on top of that are a set of milestones that I use called investment readiness levels. And investment readiness levels are IRL 9 is that investment ready business, right? So that's what I would say you are ready to scale your business once you have validated all of these milestones going from 1 through 9. And they overlay with problem, solution, and business model. So IRL 3 is that validated critical customer problem or need that you're solving for your business. IRL 5 is that product market fit or solution validation. And that's telling you that you've made your way through the red diamond and that customers want it. They're excited to have it. When can I have it? And ready to give you money for it. And then the business model, of course, is going through IRLs 6 through 9. So I'll talk a little bit about each one of these. So at the beginning, if you're coming to me in my mentoring sessions and you're really, really at the beginning, I know I want to create a business in this space, but I don't know exactly what to do yet. Well, we would start by documenting these critical assumptions that you have about your business and initial canvassing. These are the early IRLs. IRL 2 is this opportunity, or a lot of people call it, how big is the market, right? Is this really worth our time to be working on? And then there's a lot of work that happens to get to IRL 3, where you're interviewing lots and lots of potential customers. You're understanding customer segmentation. What jobs are they trying to get done? And what problems do they have with those jobs that we could potentially solve? And I'll talk more about that in a bit. I have there's two types of prototypes in the investment readiness level. So low fidelity and high fidelity. I get asked a lot what the difference is there. Generally speaking, low fidelity does not actually deliver the value to customers, and high fidelity does actually deliver the value to customers. So in the beginning, you're showing someone what an idea could be and getting their feedback on it and seeing, is this really an idea that would solve this problem for you? And then when you get into the business model, we need a higher fidelity prototype to really understand what's it going to take to build this? What's going to be the cost structure? How are we going to, if it's an online tool, right? There's server space, maybe there's key partnerships. If you're familiar with the business model canvas, the IRLs 6, 7, and 8 are filling out the entire business model canvas. 6 is really the revenue and customer model, which is the right-hand side of that, and the left-hand side is the implementation strategy, which is IRL 8. So the implementation strategy includes what's it going to cost, what key activities or resources are you going to need to do, and are there any key partnerships that you're going to need to take that business to market. Okay.
Hey, Ben, we have a question. Can you go over what the business model canvas is for the audience here?
Can.
I know some people know about it, but others do not.
Okay, sorry. I'll have to actually get a picture of it up, if that's okay. Or do you want to do that, Chris, and then we can come back to it?
I can pull it up.
Okay. So let's come back to that in a second, or sorry, I should have a copy of it in here if I'm mentioning it.
Don't worry about it. I have it here.
So the business model canvas comes from an innovation company in Europe called Strategizer. So if you're familiar with, I've got some books here too. So Strategizer comes out with books like Testing Business Ideas, Their new one's called the Invincible Company. This is a little more in the corporate innovation space, but but they also have their methodology really applies to startups as well.
I have it here, Ben. I can share my screen.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is just another way to look at the investment readiness levels. Okay, so you've got right in the middle is your value proposition, right? And on the right hand side there are your customer segments. Oh, great, you've got this right in the Miro. Perfect. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing in the first part of the investment readiness levels is we're understanding the problem or need for your customers and actually what these customer segments are. So we're starting on that right-hand side where in the customer segments box, defining what our customer segments are and the needs or problems that we're going to solve for them. And then in the middle there, the value propositions, this is that solution space. So this is how are we going to solve that problem and what is it? What is it that we're going to build? And what is the solution? You've also got customer relationships and channels in there. So that comes a little bit later after you've validated solution and you're going into the business model piece. IRL 6 is all about customer interaction and the revenue streams. So it's that it's all the rest of the boxes on the right hand side. So what channels are you going to sell through? What are the customer relationships that you're going to have? And what are the revenue streams? How exactly are you going to take people's money and how much are you going to charge for this solution that you're bringing to market? And then IRL 8 is really the left-hand side here. So this breaks down everything that's in the implementation strategy of your business. So again, the cost structure, like if you're building a new product, like how much is it going to cost you? Hopefully you're able to charge more than how much it costs you. This is a structured way of thinking through that, and so that you can communicate it to an investor when you are ready to take investment. But there's also key activities, key resources, right? So an activity might be something that needs to be going on an ongoing basis. This is like what activities or resources are in the engine that keeps your business running, right? This is where you need to document that because you're probably going to need people to do the activities, or you might need people or things in the resource space. So this is kind of like what sort of capital investments are you going to need? What types of people are you going to have to hire? That type of stuff. And then partnerships are a huge part of a lot of businesses as well. So partnerships is pretty straightforward, but is there another, say, business or even part of the government that you're going to need to partner with to make this thing successful? And there's a lot of risk if your partner doesn't agree with your business idea as much as you do. So the more that you can validate that, again, ahead of taking investment, the more you're lowering that risk for your investors.
And then how would somebody use the business model canvas? Is this something that we just write out and that's your business plan, or how would you advise people using it?
Yeah, I think it's a tool that you would potentially fill out in the beginning because you're going to have probably hypotheses about all these boxes and what you're going to need. But then as you go through this validation process, you're going to be learning a tremendous amount of what your business is, who your segments are, what the value is, and how you're going to need to deliver it to them. So I would recommend this would be like a living, breathing document that you could populate in the beginning, but then continue to update as you go through your project. It also shows progress. There's a great, and this is true with the assumptions map, which is part of the lab in the second hour here. The assumptions map is really a snapshot in time. And if you keep those old snapshots in time and update them regularly, you can show, you can better articulate the journey that you've gone through, what you thought in the beginning, how you interviewed customers, what you learned, and how your thoughts about your business changed. And there's a great article from one of the godfathers of lean innovation. His name is Steve Blank. There's a blog post, I'll grab it before we're done here, which is when you're pitching to an investor, don't confuse the destination with the journey, right? So you don't need to just talk about how great your solution is and how much money it's going to make, because investors are more than they're investing in the solution, they're investing in the team to get this solution to market. And so if you can show what you thought in the beginning, how you validated that idea and how it changed over time, you are then showing the investor how good you are at getting feedback, responding to it, shaping and vetting your business idea before you even came to them for investment.
Thanks, Ben. I'll stop sharing here and we can jump back over to your slides, but I'll share the business model canvas and some other resources here in the chat.
Great.
Thanks for asking that, Jackie.
For that article too, Chris, it's Steve Blank. Don't confuse the destination with the journey, or something similar to that. All right. And so this slide kind of brings it all together, right? So we've got problem, solution, and business model, or the investment readiness level milestones. And that's all on this search side of the business, right? So you're searching for the right problem, solution, and business model before you have that investment ready business. And then it's a whole other part of your business. Once you take that investment and you're ready to scale and grow your business, that's a whole other piece of the puzzle here. And by the way, some people are wired just to do this stuff on the left side, and some people are wired just to do the stuff on the right side, and that's perfectly okay. I think it's healthy to think through things that way and understand what we're good at and what makes us happy. All right. So while you're evaluating these ideas, it's important to think about the lean innovation mindset. And so basically, there's going to be excuses for you not to get out of the building and talk to customers. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be more difficult to go out and try and learn about your business than it is to sit inside of your house these days or office and just write out the business plan the best to your ability right now. It's always going to be more difficult to get out of the building than stay in the building. And so what these two rows in this 2x2 matrix, the first one is owner and the second one is victim. So how do you respond when these excuses or these roadblocks get presented to you and it's difficult to get in front of customers, or they're giving you feedback that you didn't anticipate? So do you take ownership of that, or do you blame other people and take a victim mindset? Those are the two rows here. And then the two columns are knower versus learner. So a knower values being right, and a learner values finding out the truth. And so that is super important, because we've got to, our initial business ideas are never as good as they need to be to go get investment. And so you've got to be willing to learn and shape and vet your business idea throughout the process here. Two really, really good resources I would recommend. So Extreme Ownership is a book by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, where they talk about their leadership. It's from the perspective of the US Navy SEALs, but it is really, really interesting how they think about leadership and taking ownership of situations. And then also there's a quote from Satya Nadella. This was fairly recently in 2020, I believe, but he said, "Don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all," which is kind of silly when I say it out loud, but it is just, it really hits home with me. And it says to me, gosh, if we want to get better, it doesn't matter how much we know, we've got to learn more. And so that just really doubles down on having this learner mindset as well. Okay. Oh, and by the way, very important. I don't believe in labeling people. I believe anybody can operate in any of these quadrants. I like to joke that I have two boys, they're 6 and 8, and we've been figuring out remote learning for the first time last week and this week. And so I feel like almost on a daily or even an hourly basis, sometimes I fall down into this victim knower quadrant, and I need to pick myself up and move myself into the owner learner mindset. So it can even apply to life at home as well. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about customer discovery, which is really the activity that takes us through the initial problem diamond here, unless there's any questions up to this point. Anything else, Christopher?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. Thanks for getting those resources in there. All right. So when I talk about customer discovery, this is really, it's not about surveys. It's not about even experiments yet. It's about like building empathy with your customer. And I have to like redefine empathy. I feel like it's getting used a lot these days. But the way that I think about it is you've got to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the customers that you're going to serve, your potential customers, and understand what it's like to be that customer. Like why do they have this problem? Like it should like put a bad taste in your mouth that that your customers have this problem. Like, oh gosh, I can't believe that happens to these people. We've got to do something about that, right? And I also have this picture on the right hand side, which is from my kids' grade school. It's a fourth grade class, and it just says to me that empathy is not something that comes naturally. It has to be taught, and we have to focus on doing it. And it is incredibly important to understanding who your customers are, what job they're trying to get done, and what the problem is with getting that job done today. Problem or problems. So empathy is such a key piece to this. And when I think about all the different ways that we could reach out to customers, I created this chart, which on the vertical axis has, you know, the number of customers that you can reach with this activity. But then on the x-axis is this depth of understanding. Like how deep can you understand your customers with each of these activities? And so if you're doing surveys or using existing data from existing surveys, right, it's a huge number of customers, but the depth of understanding is really, really, really low. And so you get information about how customers answered the questions, but you very rarely get information about why they answered the questions the way they did and what problems are underlying their responses. So it's customer discovery that's sort of the opposite of that, which is a much smaller number of customers, but a much higher depth of understanding. I would say that, you know, as you're going through to get through the problem diamond, if you're in the consumer space, I would say you need at least 100 customer interviews in customer discovery to get a good understanding of all the different segments that you could potentially go after. But boy, that's nothing compared to what you can get with a survey, right? Like you can get thousands and thousands of people to participate in a survey potentially. There's a couple of other techniques in the middle here as well. So observational research, I'm not going to talk too much about that today, but this is just observing how people get these jobs done today. So observing how your customers get their jobs done, and you are finding problems. So even if they don't bring them up when you talk to them, you can find them by watching them get their jobs done. And then experiments. So experiments measure what people do and not just what they say. So it's a little, you're learning more than you are with surveys, and you're also reaching more people potentially than you are with discovery. So it sort of lies on this curve as well. But the key point on here is that if you can get some combined methods together, it really adds a lot of meat to the validation of your business, because you have that depth of, if you start with customer discovery, which is interviewing your customers, and you have this really deep understanding of what the problem is, and then you design a survey and get hundreds or thousands more people to participate, then you can understand from what you've proven on a small scale, does that replicate across many, many, many more people? And what you do is you get this really powerful validation of your either problem, solution, or business model, and you can add to it that way. So when we're talking about interviewing customers and customer discovery, this is an incredible book. I really, really like this book. It's called Talking to Humans by Gift Constable. I recommend this book in almost all of my coaching sessions, mentoring sessions through the Polsky Center. It's a really small book. It's like less than 100 pages, and it's really to the point and excellent. So I'm going to share a short excerpt with you today, which is how do people screw up customer discovery? And I love it just because it's, he calls it the anti-patterns. This is what not to do. If anybody's old enough to remember the show Home Improvement, this is the Tim the Toolman Taylor, what not to do. All right. So number one, you treat speculation as confirmation, right? So make sure when you're thinking through the assumptions about your business, is that an assumption that we know something about and we have confirmation of, or are we really just speculating on it? When you're talking to people, and I'm really bad at this, and it's actually really nuanced, believe it or not, but leading the witness, right? The way that you ask questions, starting with how or what's it like, right, is much better than saying, boy, isn't that a big problem? And asking people to answer yes or no. So that's something that I struggle with and have to continually improve. You just can't stop talking. So obviously I have this problem because I'm talking for almost a whole hour now. But it's really important to get your question out and then stop talking so that you can hear what the customer has to say and they're not influenced by what you have to say while you're there. You only hear what you want to hear, right? So this is selective hearing, selective learning, right? It's human nature to a certain extent. So we have to fight these biases to get the true learning from our customers into the business. You treat a single conversation as ultimate truth. Of course, we want to get out there and get enough samples. Fear of rejection wins out. This one's really important. I've talked about problem, solution, and business model. And there's a really great saying. And actually just yesterday, I had to remind myself of this saying, but it is fall in love with the problem and not the solution, right? Fall in love with the problem and not the solution. Because then if a customer says they don't like your solution, then what you can say is, great, you don't like this solution, how might we solve your problem? And you can ask why they don't like it. It could be something really small, it could be something really big. But if you focus on being passionate about solving that problem, that you can beat this fear of rejection, that they don't like your idea. You talk to anyone with a pulse. So this gets back to customer segments. Who are my target customer segments? And let's not just interview anybody to get the numbers that we're looking for. You wing the conversation. So the lab that we're going to do in the next hour is a great way to prep for these interviews. And it transforms into a discussion guide that you can use in these discussions with customers. You try to learn everything in one sitting. So it's really important to respect people's time and not try to learn everything in one sitting. If they need to go, let them go. And if it's one of those, if they come back, then you know it's a big problem that you're trying to solve for them. And only the designer does qualitative research. That's pretty focused on the digital space, but it could be any other aspect of your business as well. Some people might say, well, it's just the salespeople or just the marketing people that talk to customers. No. It is everybody on the team needs to talk to customers because we all get a better understanding of what's happening. You did customer development your first week, but haven't felt the need to do it since. And you ask your customer to design your product for you. So this is, there's a great quote also from Steve Jobs, which is, it's not the customer's job to know what they want, right? It's not the customer's job to know what they want. And I love that quote. you could misinterpret it as a reason not to get out of the building. No, we have to get out of the building and talk to our customers and validate our ideas. But what he's saying there is it's the customer's job to tell you, or better yet, show you what their problems are, but it's not their job to design the solution. That's our job as the entrepreneurs, to design the solution, show it to them, and get evidence that it is attractive to our customers. Okay, any questions on that before we move on to experiments? Okay, so this is obviously my Bitmoji from before before I had a beard, but I like experiments. It's they're actually really exciting to run, and they can be really powerful if they're used the right way. So this is what's called the truth curve, and this comes from another book that I'll show you in just a second. But experiments are critical to improving that you don't have a false positive, right? That you're not getting a false sense of security that your idea is a good idea from customer interviews alone, right? People might not want to hurt your feelings and tell you that your idea is a bad idea, right? And so we have to try to complement these interviews with an experiment to test the demand for our idea when people aren't sitting across from us or on a video call these days. We've got to be able to test that demand as well. So the truth curve, the vertical axis here is the believability of the information that we're getting back from our customers. And the horizontal axis is the level of effort that you need to put in to get that feedback. And so we start with interviews on the left-hand side. It's always where we need to start because our ideas are very uncertain in the very beginning. So we need to start with interviewing our customers. But the believability of that information is the lowest and the level of effort is the lowest. So what we do is then we work into this category, and in this box, I've got all the different things that I would categorize as experiments. But there's as simple as paper testing, testing ideas on paper, all the way to making a landing page or asking customers to go through some sort of task completion, all the way through prototyping, and all the way up to a live product and business, right? So there's ways to experiment for a lot less money and test the demand of your ideas before you even come out with a live product and business, and certainly before we need all that investment from an investing company. Concierge and Wizard of Oz are some of my favorites. I will talk about those coming up here in a second. So the second book, this is called the Blue Book. The first book I called the Red Book. The second book I called the Blue Book. But again, it's really short. Testing with Humans this time by Giff Constable. And he talks about all these different experiment archetypes. So landing page, advertising, promotional material, pre-selling, paper testing, paper prototypes, Wizard of Oz and Concierge, which I'll talk more about, and even pilots and usability studies. So it's a great book that goes into detail about how to run these things and fighting the biases that we can fall into when we're running these experiments and how to avoid those. Okay, so an example of the Concierge Experiment. This is an older example, but this is before Blue Apron or HelloFresh or any of those grocery delivery services that we know of today. It's called Food on the Table, and the CEO Manuel thought he had this idea that if we knew what customers' sort of favorite recipes were or family recipes, that we could build on that with better ingredients and better recipes. And he had this idea, and before like building a website and building an algorithm and asking customers to come to it, he sold a service in person in the grocery stores. And he would walk through the aisles with people, showing them ingredients that they could try and seeing if they'd tried them yet, or giving them paper copies of new recipes for them to try. And this was not like, it's important to know, like, this is not scalable. It's not scalable to do this, especially when you're the CEO of your company. but there's no better way to test that people are willing to pay if you're able to charge for it in person, and also get a really deep understanding of what this idea needs to do when you build it online and in that in an automated format. Okay. And one of my favorite Wizard of Oz examples is from Zappos. So the Wizard of Oz is really the same as the concierge, except the customers think that it is real and that you've built it already. So there's no, in the concierge example, you can tell that the CEO is the one walking you around the grocery store, obviously. But in a Wizard of Oz, you don't know that there's no man behind the curtain, right? That there's no underlying investment happening here. It looks real. And so what happened with Zappos, the original founder, Nick Swinmurn, he had this critical assumption that was that people would be willing to buy shoes online without trying them on. And not too long ago, obviously that was a really, really risky assumption. And so instead of buying thousands of shoes and renting warehouse space to launch his business, he went to the local shoe stores like Foot Lockers, and he would take pictures of the shoes. He asked them, "Okay, can I take pictures of your shoes? I'm trying out this idea." "Sure, go ahead." So he went and took pictures of those shoes. He would put them on a website, Zappos, the Zappos website, the original Zappos website. And when customers bought them, he would go back to the store and buy the shoes. So the shoe stores were the inventory then. Again, not a scalable business, but allows you to test these assumptions on a shoestring budget without, no pun intended this time, without getting big investment from customers or from investors, I'm sorry. We've also seen this from Tesla. So I think someone put Tesla as one of the most innovative companies in our chat here. So this is the solar roof project. So they came out with really, really beautiful looking roof tiles that were actually solar panels. And you could show interest in this idea by giving them $100 and your contact information to get in line to be one of the first people to try the Tesla solar roof project. So this is really an experiment, and they're testing demand to see before they invest big in this idea. And the one thing though to be careful of is if you are actually taking people's money, that you actually have to do something with it. Because Tesla did get in a little bit of trouble because they sat on this money for, I think, over 2 years before they acted on it, and that got them into a little bit of trouble. So be careful if you're actually taking people's money. And Kickstarter, of course, or any crowdfunding website is another way to see, are people willing to put some dollars behind this idea, right? This is another type of experiment. Okay. Any questions on experiments? I know this is meant to be really high level at this point, and I'm happy to follow up if anybody has any specific questions about what you're working on. Okay.
I have a question. So if your solution can be applied in various settings, or for example, technology platform could be applied to solve various problems, is there a framework you would recommend? Like how big the market is, what's the willingness to pay?
Okay, sorry, I got interrupted by the recording. So it sounds like you've got multiple problems that could get solved with your solution. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
So I think this could come from the customer discovery, which is more of a qualitative piece, but you could also, depending on the technology and the interface that you have, you might need a new interface for each of the problems or each of the segments that you're reaching out to. It might be the same underlying technology, but sort of commercialized in a different way. And so therefore you would have to have different experiments to test the traction in each one of those, for each one of those combinations of problem and solution, right? When you're running these experiments, it's not, the underlying technology is not as important as what we call the surface, which is just what the customer interacts with and what information it provides back to you. So that is how I would run these experiments is through the user interface and what the user or customer would see. And then, and if that needs to be replicated, then you can use the results of the experiment to be more quantitative and help prioritize the problems.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. All right, so I'm checking the time here. I have a short video here that I want to show you guys and walk through with you that talks about this customer problem statement. And so this is a breakdown of when I say, what is your critical customer problem or need that you're solving with your business? I want you to be able to fill out this statement with evidence from customers that you've talked to or have participated in your experiments. So in the version that we send out to you, it will be a PDF copy. So here's a link to the video online if you'd like to watch it again later. And so we talk about the customer problem statement. It is a template. So again, don't move on into solutions until you can fill this out with evidence from your customers. So customer segment needs a better way to complete job because of the problem getting that job done in the current state today, right? So customer segment needs a better way to complete job because of the problems. So there's three key elements here: the segment, the job, and the problem. So I'm going to talk about each of those here in succession. So here's one way, and I think a really good way to define what customer segments mean. So let's say you have a prototype and you're going to put it on paper and you show it to people. Some people are going to like it, some people are not. It's not important at this stage whether they like it or not. What is important is why they like it or not. Because when we ask why, then we can iterate on that prototype and ask them again, what do you think? And then they might say yes or no again. And again, we ask why. And what this does is it creates segmentation. It creates customer segmentation. So when customers, to define customer segmentations, you can define it by why customers answer or respond differently in interviews or prototype evaluations. So if some people like your idea and some people don't, there's some sort of line there in between those customers that you need to identify so that you can separate them. Because when you create your marketing materials, you don't want to waste time marketing to the people who don't like it, right? You really want to focus on the people who do like it, the people who have the problem that you're trying to solve, okay? All right, and then here's an example for the job space that I really, really like. It's from a famous study for McDonald's that when McDonald's was trying to grow milkshake sales. And it's by Clayton Christensen. He's the author of The Innovator's Dilemma from the late 1990s. This jobs to be done theory is newer than that. This book that Clay Christensen wrote, Competing Against Luck, came out in 2016. And it's one of many books in the jobs to be done theory space, but it's a good one. And he talks about this example in there. He talks about what job would customers hire a milkshake to do? What job would customers hire a milkshake to do, right? So a really weird way of thinking about selling milkshakes. But the reason why he went after this is because McDonald's has all sorts of data on their customers, right? And they brought in a focus group of their prime, the data says this is the prime group of people that buys milkshakes for us. So probably people like me that are slightly overweight, but it's, but they're getting those people in, and McDonald's is saying, please tell me what do we need to do to sell more milkshakes? Tell us how we can improve our milkshakes. And these people told McDonald's, and McDonald's made all these changes, and it didn't change milkshake sales at all, right? So they brought in Clay Christensen and his consulting firm InnoSight, and they went through this observational research, and he framed it differently. He framed it as, what job would customers hire a milkshake to do? And so in that observational research, the first segment that he found, he observed that they came in alone, they took their milkshakes to go, and they buy milkshakes before 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a little odd, right? I don't think I've ever bought a milkshake before 9 o'clock in the morning. So I may not be in this segment. So this segment was morning commuters, right? So they have a job to be done on their morning commute, right? So they are trying to have a more exciting commute, and they're trying to stay full until lunch, right? So it's a really important way to think through your business this way, because the job that they're trying to get done, in this case with McDonald's, your competition is not it's not a Burger King milkshake, right? It's not a Wendy's Frosty. The competition are other things that can get this job done, like donuts, coffee, granola bars, etc., right? And then we can think through the specific problems that this segment has, that they're trying to, the reason why they're buying milkshakes, right? Their morning commute is too boring. They're trying not to fall asleep, and they're hungry again well before lunchtime in their jobs. Okay. So that's segment number one. Segment number two is more than one person. So this is usually a father with their child, and they usually came in the afternoon, and it didn't matter, but they either ate it in the store or they took it to go. And this segment is dads with kids. I already mentioned I have 2 boys, they're 6 and 8. So I am definitely in this category. The job to be done is be a cool dad. If any of you have kids, you know that they're asking for things left and right. Hey, can we do this? Can we do that? No. And me as the dad, I'm saying no 1,000 times. And so when we get to McDonald's, maybe I just want to buy them a milkshake to finally be able to say yes to something and improve their day. And again, the competition here is not another fast food restaurant. It could be something completely different, like buying toys at a toy store or spending time with them on a playground, right? There's different types of competition in this case when you think through it through the lens of the job that your customers are trying to get done. So here, the problems though with those other options, maybe the toy stores, like I'm going to spend at least $100 at a toy store, and the playgrounds, maybe I just don't have time today to take you to a playground and play with you for an hour. So there's problems with those other options that maybe a milkshake can uniquely solve. So different jobs have different problems with different competition, but most importantly, they lead to different solutions, right? So we've got, again, for the morning commuters, your possible solution could be taking that milkshake machine and bringing it in front of the register, where you just have to swipe your card and pay by the ounce, right? Like at some of the wine tasting places or beer tasting places that they have today. And for the dads with kids, you would have a different set of solutions. So the possible solutions might be a smaller size for the kids, so the dads don't feel so guilty buying them a 12-ounce milkshake, right? Or maybe you pair it with a toy, right? Like they do with the Happy Meals, that makes it specifically more attractive to kids. So you can see how the different segments with different jobs and different problems also lead to different solutions. So the customer problem statement is customer segment needs a better way to complete job because of problem. And different customer segments need to get different jobs done and therefore need different solutions. All right. So I'm winding down here on my my talking portion of the session this afternoon, but I want to come back to the why, which is, again, this framework of validating and testing your business idea before you get significant investment from investors, because you're trying to reduce risk for those investors when your business is investment ready. So the investors don't have to take on so much risk. And what that means is that you can demand better terms, you can get investors to compete with one another, and therefore you end up with more equity in your company for yourself as the founder. And again, don't take the big check too early, because if you do, the investor will expect you to build something. And if you haven't gone through this yet, you may not know what it is that you need to build. And so keep that in mind.
All right, thank you, Ben. We're coming up onto the hour. We have some questions coming in here, which I'd like to get to. But if anybody needs to jump off before you do, just want to let you know that you will be receiving a survey in your inbox tomorrow. Please fill that out because it helps us plan events like this one. If you really found that valuable, this session valuable, please let us know. And if anybody's staying for the lab session, we will be we'll stay on this Zoom link and we will actually take a break. We'll take some questions and then we'll take a break and come back and get started at the 15 after. So just so you know, we'll have a little break and then we'll start on the lab. So we have a question from Alex, who says, any ideas on how to navigate customer discovery for problems for people that they may not be aware of or fully aware of, and perhaps problems that may occur in the future?
Ooh, that's interesting. So there is an element, you're never going to reduce your business risk to zero, right? And if you think the problem is going to occur in the future, obviously it's hard to measure the magnitude of that problem now. So that is some remaining risk, right? Trying to predict the future and be the first to market with your ideas. So that one is a little bit different. But the first part, if the customer doesn't know that they have the problem today, and you think the problem exists with a job that they're doing today, what you can do is you can actually show them the solution, right? Come up with what you think the solution might be. And even if they can't articulate that they have a problem, if you show them the solution, Steve Blank would say, and this is why video calls with customers are super important, because you need to watch for their pupils dilating when they see your idea, like, oh my gosh. Or like, if we're ever in person again, they're taking out their wallet and trying to give you money for that idea, right? Like it is, you're looking for those types of problems where even if they can't articulate that they have a problem, but if you show them the solution, you get that interest, that desirability anyway. I hope that helps.
And what did you call was it the problem statement? I have a question. What did you call the statement?
Yeah, I just call it the customer problem statement. It's just a way to articulate and formalize like what business problem, what problem for customers are we trying to solve when we move forward, and it allows you to articulate that to investors, right? It is really the reason why you're doing your business. There's an incredibly great Simon Sinek video out there. It's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action, but it's sort of alternatively titled Start with the Why. And if you start with the why for your business is the problem that you're solving for your customers. And so whenever you're trying to either recruit people to join you or you're trying to raise money, starting with that problem and making people feel that pain is the best way to do that. So the customer problem statement is a way to document that when you're moving through your project.
Jackie has a comment. This is great. A thought. If the problem theoretically does not exist, perhaps the problem is not researched enough and actually does exist in another form for another segment. Would you agree with that, Ben?
Super true. It is so true. And my co-founder has been really involved with the Innovation Core. I haven't been as involved with that yet, but what that is it's a setting that applies lean innovation, but to commercialize university research, right? And so when you have university research that you're trying to commercialize, it's you're trying to then take a step back and say, okay, we've got this technology. What problems could we solve for customers in this way? And so you have to be, you have to be humble, and it takes a tremendous amount of tenacity, but you have to be able to take steps back in the process and interview customers. And you don't want to focus too much on one segment. You want to make sure that you're trying many different segments in the beginning so that you can find one that really has a problem that can be solved with your solution.